Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, and freshly returned from Anime St. Louis, is the Cat. Cat, you look like you've just been through a war zone.
I think I have, man. I think I have. If it's too quiet in the house at night, I can still hear the light sound of a rave in the background. Yep, there it is. God.
Post-convention stress disorder?
Seriously, though, as soon as the con was over, and I sat down, and my roommate had class, and my roommate was on my staff this year, and as soon as she was off and had class, I just sat down and cried. And not for any, bad reason. It was everything went actually really good for the first time ever. But it was had so much pent-up stress throughout the weekend. For the last couple of weeks, really, I've been last couple of months, really. But especially the last couple of weeks, there's just been so much crap in my personal life. And then the con rolled around, and by the end of it, I was just okay, now I need to get all that stress out, have a good cry, and then be done. Wipe my hands of it and get ready for next year.
We had a really good show, and I'm really proud of myself, but I want to die.
Yeah, it was really like that. It was I had to Monday morning. So yesterday, we're recording on Tuesday. So yesterday morning, so the day after the convention is over, I still had to get up at 6 a.m. to get a guest to the airport, and then I had breakfast, and then I laid back down and slept for 45 minutes, and that brought my total sleep up to over 5 hours for the first time in a week. And I was oh, that was the best 45 minutes of my life.
All right. Well, you sound like you've got some coffee in you, or stuck yourself up to a battery or something, because you sound like you're ready to talk about our discussion topic for this week, and that's Avengers: Infinity War. And so we're not doing Ask a Geek this week or a random topic. We're just gonna jump right into our discussion topic, because holy crap, Infinity War! There is so much that needs to be unpacked from this movie. This is probably the most what's the word I'm looking for?
It was packed. It was packed. There was so much happening in it.
But yeah, and we say this for every movie discussion that we do. But the sound that you're hearing is our patented spoiler alarm, and we're going to play it nice and loud this week, because we were going to warn you that there are spoilers, and they're rather big ones. So if you have not seen this movie yet, please, we implore you, if you have not seen this movie yet, but you plan to, we implore you, please press the pause button, go see the movie, and then come back and listen to us talk about it, because we are going to be unpacking everything. So let's just start with our general thoughts on Avengers: Infinity War, and I guess I'll start by saying I have not been this... when this movie was over and finished, I had to spend a good 20 minutes after the credits ending just sitting there in my car, just trying to process what I had seen. This is the first time that I knew coming out of it the first time I saw it that I enjoyed it, but I knew that I was going to have to go back and see it again to try and figure out why I enjoyed it, which I did yesterday, which I've never had that dissonance where it's okay, I know I like the film, but given what's happened, I need to process it and figure out why I liked it. But this film was our generation's Luke, I Am Your Father. I really think it is. I don't think anybody expected this movie to go the way that it did.
No, not at all. All of my friends and I and my coworkers, we were all having discussions, placing bets on who we thought was going to die, and we were all wrong, every single one of us. Absolutely nothing in this film happened the way I thought it was going to, which is really, really kind of incredible, because Marvel movies have suffered from Marvel movie syndrome, where every movie has it hits the same beats every time, and it's kind of predictable. And this movie was definitely not predictable.
And there's a part of this that I haven't really seen talked about, and I think it's rather genius on Marvel's part. We all realize that this is just part one, right, of a two-part duology, but something that I kind of didn't realize until after I'd seen this movie is, for the last few months, Marvel quietly dropped any references to Part 2. They even removed the Part 1 from the Infinity War subtitle. So I think because we hadn't heard anything about the second part for a while, we kind of fooled ourselves into going into this movie thinking it was going to be a standalone, and that, you know, it was all going to be wrapped up in one film.
I honestly didn't have that expectation at all, but, you know, I kind of had an idea in my head of where I thought it would end. You know, I thought for sure that it would end, you know, at more, I don't want to say more of a cliffhanger, because that was one fucking hell of a cliffhanger, but I thought it would end with, like, maybe the exact moment Thanos gets all of the stones, or it would end with a race to get the last stone or something. I did not expect it to end where it ended. And my most generic thought, my most general thought on the film is that I don't feel like I watched a movie. I feel like I am now burdened with information. I feel like I read a really heavy book, and now I'm sitting around waiting for the next book to come out. Like, I don't know, I can't really explain the feeling other than that I feel like I know too much. And that I'm just sitting waiting for the next movie with all of this, like, this heaviness, the pain of not knowing. Man, it's rough.
It'd be like if Harry Potter Book 7 ended with the escape from the Death Eaters at the start, where Mad-Eye Moody and Hedwig got killed.
Yeah. God damn. But yeah.
So,
wow.
So let's start by breaking the film down into its component pieces, and let's start by giving a rundown of the plot. Which, oh boy, there's a lot to talk about. And I want to say that one of the things that I really like about the plot and scripting of this film is how deftly the movie paces itself. I remember being very surprised. The first time I saw this movie, I went to an 11:20 showing. And I was expecting this movie to be, you know, as I'm sitting there watching this movie, it felt like I was in the theater for like 4 hours. There was just so much stuff happening. But then when the credits finally ended and the lights went up and I looked down and I watched, it's like, oh, it's only 1:45. Like, this movie is not as long as it feels like it is. I don't know, was I the only one who noticed that?
It definitely felt like an eternity. And that's even funnier because everything in the movie happens in a very short amount of time. Like a day or two? All of that stuff happens, and there's so many different settings and characters and like groups of characters, and it all happens in a very short amount of time, but it really feels like an infinity right there in and of itself. Like, it felt like a long time. But
in a good way.
Yeah, in a very good way.
It's like you're sitting through the movie and you're like, oh man, so much stuff is happening, but like I have to see it all, but like this is going to eat up my whole day. And then you come out of it and it's like, oh, you know, only a couple hours have passed. I have time to get myself a scone. But anyway, so let's start with a basic rundown of the plot. So the film opens with it literally picks up immediately after Thor Ragnarok. Like, the two films literally lead into each other. And we see that the Asgard vessel, the Asgard refugee ship, has just been utterly curb stomped. Like, the only people that we see that are still alive on the ship are Thor, Banner, and Heimdall and Loki. And we see Thanos has already gotten the Power Stone. He apparently got it by destroying Xandar off screen. And he's basically holding Thor hostage and trying to get Loki to give him the Tesseract, which he knows Loki has because Loki stole it, while Asgard was being destroyed in Thor Ragnarok. And this is where we kind of see the first real shades of the fact that Thanos is not going to be, he's on a whole other level from the villains up to this point, because not only does he casually kill Loki, but he also fights the Hulk to a standstill, unassisted, which, like, both of those I didn't expect to ever see in a Marvel movie. Yeah,
I mean, I went into this going, Loki's safe. He's the most popular villain, and he's he's the kind of villain that you can have him reoccur in any movie that you want, and it would be perfectly natural for him to just show up. So I never once thought that Loki was in any danger.
Yeah. So Loki winds up giving up the Tesseract and then tries to assassinate Thanos. But having worked with Loki before, Thanos, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. I'm pretty sure I got that reversed. And he kills Loki, but Heimdall manages before the ship explodes and before he tries to do the Gondor Calls raid, and he flings Banner through the Bifrost to Earth, where he lands in the sanctum of Doctor Strange, and where we see this really neat little moment with Doctor Strange and Wong, where we kind of realize that Strange is still kind of getting used to being the whole Sorcerer Supreme, because it's like, wait, you mean we don't get a stipend, we don't get any money? And Wong's like, connection to the material is disconnecting from the spiritual, and Strange's like, yeah, but we still got to eat. So, and Banner brings the message that Thor. Let's try that again. That Thor is coming with the Infinity Stones. Yeah, if only the movie was like that. Let's try that again. Edit. So Banner brings the message that Thanos is coming with the Infinity Stones, and it's at that point that Strange goes and commandeers Tony Stark to get this whole shindig rolling. And can I say that I absolutely loved finally seeing Tony Stark and Doctor Strange together, because I knew that it was going to be wonderful to finally see Robert Downey Jr. having to go toe-to-toe with somebody who can give as good as he gets. So what did you think of that whole interplay between Stark and Strange?
It was interesting because we did only have one movie and a brief cameo with Doctor Strange, so we don't know as much about him as we do just about every other character, and so to see a more callous side of Doctor Strange as Doctor Strange, not as him being a jerk like in the beginning of his film, but him being the Sorcerer Supreme and coming off as kind of a jerk, going, look, I need to protect this stone at all costs, otherwise the fucking world will end, and I don't care who gets in my way. If you get in my way of me protecting this stone, I don't care. You can die for all I care. Like, that was a very interesting side of him to see. And it made a lot of sense, and we tend to think of Doctor Strange and Iron Man being very similar because they have very similar origin stories, but I think it showed a real difference in their characters right off the bat, and we do see a bit of a change in Doctor Strange later, but he is still kind of an enigma to us because we've had so little interaction with him. So it was really great to see two characters who we've always thought of as being very similar, and to see just how different they are.
Indeed. Okay. So do you want to recap the next section of the plot, or?
Sure, to the best of my remembrance, since I did see it a couple weeks ago now, and I did only get it once. So Thanos sends his minions down to Earth to try and retrieve, I guess, the Time Stone is what they were going after. Oh, they were going after both the Time Stone.
Yeah, the Time Stone and the Mind Stone.
Yes, so both stones. So they send out multiple parties of bad guys, of disposable minions, who I actually really enjoyed those minions. They were visually very interesting, if not interesting in personality. And a bunch of fights start going down in different places. So we have the fight with... the fight we have already talked about, and then another fight starts to go down with Vision and
Scarlet Witch.
Scarlet Witch. I was trying to think of real names, and I'm like not getting anything.
Yeah, we cut to Vision and the Scarlet Witch in Europe as they're attacked by a pair of Thanos' toughs trying to get the Mind Stone, and they're saved at the last second by Captain America, the Falcon, and the Black Widow. But it's in this moment that we kind of start to see the beginnings of the emotional core of the movie, as we see that Wanda and Vision, they've been stealing themselves away to try and get some time together. They've been falling in love and they're trying to steal some time together to make some whoopee. To boil it down quick, yeah. And we're introduced very quickly to this dilemma that, in order to prevent Thanos from getting his hands on the Mind Stone, it may be necessary to destroy the stone, which would kill Vision. And the only person who can do that is Wanda. So right at the start of the movie, we're put into this position where there's like a Hail Mary pass that, is all going to go on Wanda's shoulders. And, she's just had so much shit happen to her over the last few movies she's been in. I mean, she's lost her brother. She's been basically the catalyst for the Civil War in the third Captain America movie, which led to the Avengers breakup. And now there's a possibility that she might have to kill her lover. Like, your heart really goes out to her throughout this movie, because there's always that sort of Damocles hanging over her that in order to save the world, she might have to destroy the person she loves. Now, to everyone's credit, everyone tries to acknowledge that, okay, look, we're gonna have to find an alternative here, because as Cap says, we don't trade lives. So it's not like they're just leading Vision to the slaughter.
And I love that dynamic, because that is very, very heroic to say, no, we're not sacrificing anybody. And for Vision to be so willing to be sacrificed is a really beautiful, sad dynamic. And for him to be willing and understand that it's very hard, because it would be Wanda having to do it. But, I think in his mind, in Vision's mind, she's the best one for it. Like, he wouldn't mind because it was her, and it's really nice, because Vision is sort of a machine. He's very analytical and not completely understanding of humans and human emotion, but it's interesting that the characters in this film who are the least likely for us to imagine having human emotion are at the emotional core of the film.
Yeah. So we see the now ex-Avengers going back to the Avengers compound and hooking up with War Machine and going to Wakanda to try and get a defense ready for when Thanos inevitably comes. And then there's a third plot line that runs through with the Guardians of the Galaxy discovering Thor floating in space, and that plot thread splits off into two. One where Gamora is trying to prevent Thanos from getting his hands on the Soul Stone with Drax and Star-Lord and Mantis, and then Groot, Rocket, and Thor go off on their own to the Star Forge to get a new hammer made. And I gotta say, this is one of the few complaints that I have about Infinity War, and that's Thor's arc. His whole arc in Ragnarok was him coming to grips with the fact that he didn't need the hammer to use his powers. And the movie justifies it by saying he needs a weapon that's mighty enough to kill a Titan. But we also, we kind of start to the movie kind of, Infinity War kind of backpedals on the whole Thor doesn't need a hammer to use his power bit from Ragnarok, or at least that was my perception of it. But otherwise, it was a great arc, and we discover that the dwarf at the forge was actually the one who forged the Infinity Gauntlet, and we start to see in this arc, and also in Gamora's arc, which we'll get to in a moment, some of the depths to which Thanos, how cruel Thanos can be, and it's where this movie kind of sets up kind of a bait and switch. Because the movie kind of starts by presenting Thanos as being just evil for evil's sake. Like he's just, like we like to say in the show, he just twirls his mustache. Because he made the deal with the dwarf that if the dwarf made the gauntlet, he would spare his people. And then he just kills all the dwarves anyway, except for the one, and turns his hands to stone so that he can't forge anything else. So, what did you think of this arc?
I actually really enjoyed the Thor arc. The only thing I didn't like about it was Peter Dinklage. And not because I didn't enjoy his performance, but because I knew it was Peter Dinklage. That to me, it took me out of the movie to put such a recognizable actor into any kind of role like that. It just took me right out. Even especially a character who was called a dwarf was just really like, really. Giant Peter Dinklage.
I gotta say, I imagine Peter Dinklage appreciated the irony of him playing a character called a dwarf, who's actually the tallest member of the show, the tallest person on the show.
I definitely thought those exact words in my head. Otherwise, I did not mind the Thor going off on his own and getting a new super weapon arc. I would have liked it more if like they had gotten more super weapons while they were there, because that was the justification for Rocket and Groot going, was that so that they were interested in going.
They wanted the big guns.
Right, they wanted the big guns, and they only got one weapon, and it was just for Thor. And like you said, it was right after Thor, had his hammer destroyed and realized he didn't really need it. But it certainly couldn't hurt.
Yeah.
So now, I didn't mind that it sort of, retconned, backpedaled a little bit for Thor Ragnarok, because it was so fucking awesome.
Now, one of the things that I do want to say about both of the Guardians arcs before we get into Gamora's arc, and I think that's pretty much how we're going to have to discuss the plot of this film, is just discuss the arcs in turn rather than the film in sequence, is, and I didn't learn this until after I'd seen the film, but they actually got James Gunn, the guy who directed the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, to direct the sequences with the Guardians, because Marvel wanted the characterization of the Guardians to be internally consistent while still fitting in with the larger Marvel pantheon. Because, let's be totally honest here, the tone of the Guardians films is very different from most anything else Marvel that has been put out in the MCU. But when you're watching these segments with the Guardians, it feels like you're watching a real Guardians of the Galaxy film, but it's still internally consistent within Infinity War's story. And I thought that was really masterfully done.
I would definitely agree with that. It did not feel like, like Thor has been a little inconsistently written, of all characters. And so to have the Guardians so consistently written, I think was very important, because the Guardians are such a motley crew, and you can't just fling them at whatever, like, I think they're not harder to write, but because there's so many of them, you have to be careful with how you write them so that you don't fuck it up, basically. And they did such a great job of making it feel like, yeah, remember that the last film that they were in? Here you go. Yeah.
So then the other Guardians arc is the arc with Gamora and the Soul Stone, and it starts with them going back to nowhere, the location from the first Guardians film, to get the Reality Stone, or the Dark Matter as we knew it in Thor: The Dark World. And there's this absolutely heartbreaking moment. Before they get there, Gamora makes Peter promise that if there's a possibility that Thanos gets his hands on her, that Peter will kill her. And Peter, after some, light joking, and realizes that Gamora is coming from Sirius Town, and agrees. So they get to nowhere, and there's this. As they arrive, it looks as though Thanos is trying to get the Reality Stone from the Collector, played here by returning Benicio del Toro. And Gamora takes the opportunity to strike, and it looks like she's killed Thanos. And then we've gotten throughout her arc, we've known from the start that she hates Thanos, and that she wants to see him toppled, to see him ended. But then, when it looks like she's actually killed him, instead of doing the "Oorah, I finally did it, ooh, there you go, in your face," she just breaks down and starts sobbing. And I thought that was a really powerful moment, because before we got to this point, we saw her first meeting with Thanos, and we saw that he basically took her from her mother and executed her mother right in front of Gamora. And it really felt like this was a natural endpoint for Gamora's arc with Thanos, that this is someone who, she's had a very complicated relationship. She's hated Thanos all of her life, but at the same time, this person, Thanos was basically her father. So to see this arc kind of come to its close, I thought was a really heartbreaking moment. And then the rug gets yanked out from under you when you realize that this is all an illusion, and Thanos has the reality.
Yeah, what a great moment for not just Gamora, but for Star-Lord. Because now, Star-Lord has only heard about Thanos and has felt the repercussions of Thanos' existence, but now he's getting to see what a badass Thanos really is, and the hatred that Gamora has for him is becoming real for Star-Lord as well. And it sets off both of their, everything that happens to the huge chunks of the story are affected very specifically by Star-Lord and Gamora's decisions from this point, or from their story arcs at this point. And if we could continue on Gamora's arc, out of sequence with the rest of it, because her arc and all the stuff that happened with that was absolutely amazing.
That's pretty much what we're going to have to do. So
yes.
Let's stick with Gamora for a bit.
So Thanos takes Gamora, to were they on Titan at that point?
No, Thanos didn't go to Titan until after he had the Soul Stone. He takes her to his ship.
Oh, to the ship, where he has been torturing Nebula, who he had caught sneaking aboard the ship some time ago, in an attempt to murder him, because great father-daughter relationships in this are very complicated. And he basically tortures Nebula until Gamora gives up the location of the Soul Stone, which she had known all along, and that was the reason why she asked Peter to kill her if she ever, fell under Thanos' influence, because she's the only person who knows where it is. Well, it turns out Nebula knew that Gamora knew where it was. So Gamora gives up the location in order to spare Nebula any more pain, which is, I think, really beautiful, because their progression as a pair of sisters has been really interesting throughout the duration of the Guardian movies, and now culminating in them basically trying to save and/or avenge each other.
And it's also during this arc that we also get our first hints at Thanos' motivations. Not necessarily the lengths he'd go to fulfill them, but just what his motivations are. The lengths we get to later. And I gotta say, this is one of those cases where I'm glad that they didn't do what they did in the books, because based on my knowledge of how the Infinity War played out in the comics, it's my understanding that Thanos still wanted to wipe out half of all life, but that he was doing that as a stunt to get the personification of death, who in the Marvel universe is a beautiful woman, to fall in love with him. So in the film, they've changed it to he's trying to basically reduce the number of lives that will be draining the universe's resources. He talks about Gamora's home. He's like, look, before I came, you were scrounging in the street and starving. Now, after half of that population's been wiped out, the people that are left, they have nothing but full bellies and beautiful skies. It's a paradise. And it's here that we first start to see that Thanos is basically the Webster's Dictionary definition of a tyrant. He is doing what he thinks is good for the whole of the universe. And by a certain logic, he's correct, but that logic is itself so evil and abhorrent that you can't help but recoil from it. And that he believes so strongly in this that he will go to the lengths that we're about to discuss that he goes to, establishes that it makes this fine balancing act between making Thanos a sympathetic villain, but also one that you absolutely, really, really hate, if that makes any sense.
He definitely has a martyr complex where he sees himself as a savior and as the only one who can make this great sacrifice. That sacrifice is killing a lot of other people, and it makes him such a hypocrite as well, because he sees himself as doing such good, and he doesn't recognize or comprehend the suffering that he inflicts on people. He only sees the benefit, and he completely ignores the pain that he causes.
He's basically taking. Sorry, go ahead.
And we could definitely go into the numerous flaws in this, but he also excludes himself from the culling.
He's basically taking a utilitarian philosophy that's horrifying extreme.
Yeah. So he's this kind of a hypocrite on top of everything else. And anybody who says that he's a sympathetic villain is really fucking warped. Like, it's one thing to understand his motivations, and then to sympathize with them is completely different. So please don't call him the sympathetic villain, because then I have serious.
Well, you've known for years I was warped, so
yeah. Well,
but,
I mean, you're
okay, so maybe not sympathetic, but like you can see where he's coming from at least.
Yeah, and it's great. It's a great change from the mustache twirling, suit wearing villains that Marvel has given us quite a lot of. It is nice to see a villain with such complex and kind of impersonal motivations. Like, most of the villains that we have are motivated by greed or by their own pain, and this is a villain who is motivated by what he views as generosity. And again, he thinks he's a savior when he's really a murderer. This is why he's mad. Like, they call him the Mad Titan, and he doesn't understand why. And this is why.
And while we're on the subject of Thanos, it's important to point out that he's very much the central character of this movie, because he's, we've already seen all the other, he's the only one with an arc. We've seen all the other characters develop, so it's kind of like we don't really need to see them develop more. We know who they are. But Infinity War takes a rather unusual tack in that it sort of makes Thanos the central character throughout this film, which I thought was a really bold move. But anyway, putting the train back on the tracks. So Gamora takes Thanos to the planet that the Soul Stone is on, and it's here we get a surprise cameo from the Red Skull.
Oh my god. I flipped my shit. Oh my god. I was one of those people who audibly gasped so loud, and I know I was the only one who was that loud, because I have been kicking around the idea that it should be common knowledge, but a lot of people have forgotten or don't realize, because of the way the action sequence worked in the first Avenger, that Red Skull did not die, because he basically was evaporated or whatever by the Tesseract, which is the Space Stone. Excuse me. So he was literally pulled somewhere into space, and we haven't heard from him since. So we've been just sitting here twiddling our thumbs, waiting to see what happens with him, and for him to finally come back is absolutely amazing. I've been wanting that for such a long time.
And also, we gotta stop here and give props to the actor playing the Red Skull in this movie, who does a admirable Hugo Weaving impression. Yes,
it was really good. I recognized that he didn't sound like Hugo Weaving, but at no point did I think, oh, that's not Hugo. He was such a distorted, like, wraith-like version of the Red Skull that it made sense that he, like, sounded kind of different. He was just like a shade of the Red Skull. And it looked so cool. I just want to put that out there, that it looked really cool.
But, so the Red Skull now is basically condemned to be a guide to the Soul Stone. And it's here that we learned that the Soul Stone can be obtained by someone who's willing to sacrifice the thing they love the most. And this is where Gamora kind of does her little happy dance. She's like, oh, look, you wanted this something. The universe told you no, because you don't love anybody. You don't love anything. So, you're never going to get this. This whole trip was for nothing. And this is where, again, we get a glimpse into just how warped Thanos is. Because it turns out that in his own twisted, weird way, Gamora really is the one thing that he loves in the universe. And let me preface this by saying that, this is in no way a healthy relationship between the two of them, or a healthy mindset that Thanos is in. But it serves to highlight again how loathsome and abhorrent Thanos' logic and how his view of the universe is, that he basically sacrifices Gamora as the one thing that he loves in the universe, and it fucking works. And it's one of the most heartbreaking and horrifying moments in the film.
It really was, and it appears, as far as we can tell, as, you know, like a death, like a real death. Like, we wouldn't have expected that out of any of the Guardians, and you know, you could kind of see Loki getting off at the beginning, and Heimdall is more or less a throwaway character at this point in the MCU, but Gamora is the one that really blew me out of the water, because there is already scheduled a third Guardians of the Galaxy film. And how can that possibly work with Gamora dead at the bottom of a ravine? Like, what the actual fuck? So I never once thought any of the Guardians' lives were in danger until that moment. And I'm so surprised. I'm as surprised as anybody that there was something that Thanos actually truly loved in his own mind.
So
what an incredible scene. Like, that was just so masterfully done. It was a little predictable for me for this film, but if that was the only predictable moment of this film, that's pretty amazing.
I liken it to knowing. I would say I knew that it was coming, but the fact that I saw it coming was what made it so much of a gut punch, because I wanted it to not be so.
Yeah, exactly.
So that pretty much concludes Gamora's arc, as now Thanos has the Soul Stone. So while all this is going on, the next arc in the sequence is involving Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man on the initial attacking ship that came to Earth. They've killed the Squidward-looking minion, and now they're trying to figure out what to do with the Time Stone. And Iron Man is very much saying, look, we got to go back to Earth, and we got to, keep this from... No, excuse me, I've got it reversed. Doctor Strange is very much like, look, no, we've got to take the stone back to Earth and keep it out of Thanos' hands. And Iron Man is like, look, we can either fight on our turf or his turf, or at least on his turf. Nothing expects it. He doesn't expect it. And Spider-Man is just like, hey, have you ever seen Alien?
Oh, Peter.
And
it's so cute.
And along the way, they wind up running into the rest of the Guardians. So Iron Man, Strange, and Peter join forces with Star-Lord, Drax, and Mantis, and eventually Nebula kicks in too. They go to Titan, which I'm not sure if they mean like the moon Titan, the moon of Saturn, or if another planet that just happens to be named Titan. And it's there that they plan to kind of make kind of a final stand against Thanos to try and get the gauntlet off of him while still protecting the Time Stone so that he doesn't get to Earth. And this is, again, we see kind of an interesting mixing of the Guardians of the Galaxy with the other members of the Marvel Pantheon. And again, we see how the characterizations are so masterfully balanced because, Star-Lord and Mantis and Drax, they're still, kind of the wacky, not-so-serious characters, juxtaposed with the super serious Iron Man, Strange, and to a lesser extent Spider-Man, but it still works internally consistently. And again, we get one of these great moments where Iron Man is dealing with Star-Lord and his pomposity, and he just realizes, oh my god, is this how everybody else feels when I'm around? Like I went to go see this movie the second time with my dad, and he absolutely does not like Stark as a character. And he said of those scenes, like that was 6 movies of karma coming back to bite Tony in the ass.
Oh, it's so true, and it's actually really incredible that a bunch of whoever wrote the film or however many people wrote the film sat down, and I wonder what the process must have been like. Like, how did they decide, okay, we want these characters in a fight together against Thanos? Like, how did they decide these characters in particular? Did they decide these characters specifically to get the emotional payoff at the end? Or did they pick these characters because they thought they would be the most interesting on screen together? Or did the story basically start writing itself and that's what they ended up with? I don't know, but it was such a great set of characters to have to balance each other out, as you said. Just the ridiculousness of the Guardians, just up against the more serious characters, and poor Peter Parker is just trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And what I love is that none of them are really phased, like none of the Earthlings are phased by the aliens really at all at this point, even though they really should be, because they've only ever really fought aliens, and now there's some aliens that are on their side, even though they did each other at first. And so I think that they would be a little more curious about each other, but they really don't have time. And I wish they did have a little more time to kind of explore the relationship between humans and the non-humans, and how they should be surprised by each other, but they're not.
So the plan that they come up with is to basically distract Thanos long enough that they can incapacitate him and get the gauntlet off of them by Mantis putting him to sleep. Which we get a couple. She does it a couple of times to Drax to kind of reestablish for those who haven't seen Guardians that, hey, she can do that. And we get this really awesome fight with just all these characters just wailing on Thanos and him just taking it. And they eventually manage to tie him down long enough that Mantis is able to start, shutting down his mind. And again, it's here that they look like they won, but it's here again that the movie pulls the rug out from under you. Because in the course of basically doing his happy dance, oh yeah, booyah, in your face, because that's what Star-Lord does. He is going to take the time to do the dance off to save the universe. He learns that Thanos killed Gamora, and he just absolutely loses his mind. And it's interesting that this is one of the things I've seen where there's been some debate as to, whether or not, Peter was, what's the word I'm looking for? In the wrong, I guess is the best way I can put it, to react the way he did, because on the one hand, he just found out that the person he loves has been killed, and her killer is right there in front of them, and he's not in exactly the best headspace. But on the other hand, he kind of derailed the whole plan, and is partly the reason why Thanos was able to make it to Earth in the first place. So I don't know. What did you think of that moment?
I also keep in mind that Doctor Strange used the Time Stone to look into the 14 million or whatever, 14.5 million futures, and only saw one where they beat Thanos. And I think we can safely say that Doctor Strange does what it takes throughout this film to make sure that one future comes true. And I think, at least in my opinion, that
he saw that moment coming with Quill?
Yeah, I mean, even if he didn't see it exactly, what needed to happen still happened. And I don't blame Quill at all. Was it stupid? Yes, but Quill is human. And I can't say that I would have done anything different, or that anyone else in that room or that group would have done anything different. Tony makes stupid fucking decisions every day of the week. And, he gets shit on for it, just as he should. So I don't blame Quill at all. I think it just does even more to solidify the idea that, again, things that happen with Gamora and Star-Lord have a ripple effect on the plot, which is kind of incredible when you think about it, because Star-Lord's an idiot. I love him, but he's an idiot. But like I said, I think, again, these things were necessary, because as Tony almost dies, I don't remember at what point that happens now, because so much happened, but Tony... Well,
it's after Quill basically derails the Mantis makes him sleep plan, and Thanos, not making this up, drops a fucking moon on everybody.
Oh my god, that was amazing.
He pulls a Majora's Mask and just chucks a moon at them. So it basically comes down to Stark and Thanos just going one-on-one with each other. And again, we get a look at just how top tier on the threat scale Thanos is, because one of the things that we're told at the start of the movie is that Tony's armor now is made up of nanomachines that can self-repair. But as we see this fight go on between Thanos and Stark, you start to see Tony's suit falling apart because more damage is being done to it faster than the suit is able to repair, or the nanites are being destroyed in however, whatever mad stunts Tony is pulling off. So by the end of it, he's only got half a suit of armor. And this is where the movie, again, kind of subverts your expectations, because there's a moment in the fight where Thanos gets the upper hand and fucking impales Tony Stark. And
this is the moment where everybody in the audience, I won my betting pool. And I do want to backtrack for just 1 second, because you had said that it shows how top tier Tony is when he's going toe to toe with Thanos. But actually, and I don't know if it's because I know.
Well, I said how top tier Thanos is, but
how top tier Thanos is to be going toe to toe with Tony. And I actually thought the opposite, that that it shows how horrifying Thanos is going to be once he gets the other stones, because he's beaten the shit out of every other Avenger, and he's going toe to toe with Tony right now. And this is, we've had all of these movies to show us what a badass Tony is, and
here comes this guy who literally lampshades it. It's like there's a moment where Tony whacks Thanos and actually manages to draw blood, and Thanos is like, all that for one drop of blood.
Exactly.
Like he doesn't even blink.
Like, I thought it was, it's such a great fight, because for a little while there, you think, wow, they could actually win this. And of course, Starla goes and fucks it up. But because I know just enough that about the comics and everything to know that he is just so terrifying, that I thought, wow, it's really great that they're keeping up with him. I was really impressed that they were keeping up with him, and that they almost won. And it just made me go, oh no, this is just like a little prelude, that this is just a warm-up, because he's going to get the other stones, otherwise there's no plot. And it's setting us up to see just how powerful he's going to be. They showed us a fight with him with 1 stone and then 2 stones, and they're just going to show a fight every time he gets a new stone, just to show you how scared you should be. But anyway, so yes, I really, really loved that fight. And then he drops the moon on him. He impales Tony Stark. So everybody thought, oh yeah, I definitely won my betting pool. And then the most batshit thing happens, where Stephen Strange, who had said that he would let Spider-Man and Iron Man die in order to protect that stone, he just gives Thanos the time stone. And everybody in the audience is like, what the fuck? And then you go back and you remember he had said he had seen 14 million different ways that this could go, and only one of them ended in victory. And so you gotta know that when he hands that stone over, he is doing everything he can to ensure that they win, and that this is how it's done. Even though it seems completely the opposite, it seems like the worst possible thing you could do is hand him one of the stones. But that is what he does.
And what I love about that moment is, you've got it playing in the back of your mind that, okay, he saw this future, so, you're probably thinking, okay, he's seeing this, that this has to happen, but the movie doesn't explain to you why. So even though you know that Strange has a reason for doing this, you're still screaming, "What are you playing at?"
Yeah, you're still angry and emotional. You're like, "What the fuck are you doing?" No, this you think there can't possibly be any way that this makes things better or okay in any way. You're still so confused and angry, so angry, because for a moment there you think, Stephen is actually much softer than we gave him credit for, because he had said that he would throw everyone under the bus to protect that stone, to keep Thanos from getting the stone, and then he hands it over.
Now is not the time to show you have a heart.
Right, but he specifically hands it over saying, spare that man's life. And it makes him sound softer and more desperate. And I think it's actually quite brilliant, because I think he's really not that soft or desperate. I think he was letting Thanos believe that in order to make it believable that he would willingly give up the stone.
So, and that pretty much concludes the Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange arc for the time being. So the last arc to really be discussed, and this is the one that even though it has the most minimal effect on the plot as far as how the story progresses, it's the one with the most characters, and that's the arc on Earth with the Avengers in Wakanda preparing a defense. And it's at this point that I kind of want to go back to Bruce Banner, because one of the things that I thought was really interesting in this movie was they don't use the Hulk. We see the Hulk all of once at the beginning of the movie when he tries to fight Thanos, and we again get our first taste of how top tier a threat Thanos is when he not only fights the Hulk unassisted, he actually beats him, and the Hulk spends the whole rest of the movie scared to come out and face Thanos or any of his minions. That's Banner's arc throughout this whole movie, is he's trying to convince he's like, I've spent so many movies trying to control you and only trying to bring you out when I need you. Well, now when I need you, where the hell are you?
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Hulk has never had an arc. In all of these movies, we've seen slightly different variations of the Hulk, say from The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton, who's that movie is canon in the MCU, but since they changed actors, we kind of forget about that film. And so we've seen different, slightly different variations, levels of intelligence, and poise to the Hulk. But we've never seen the Hulk really change all that much, if that makes sense. Like every movie, the Hulk is just sort of the same version at the end as he started as. He's
the big stick that they bring out when they need somebody beat.
Right.
But now the stick is broken.
Right. So it's it's interesting to see Bruce Banner trying to survive a fight, which he is not equipped for, without turning into the Hulk. But it's also interesting because it's an unfinished character arc that will inevitably have to conclude in the second film. And a lot of people were really frustrated with it, and I think they're frustrated because it didn't conclude. It's okay for the Hulk to be scared, but eventually he needs to get over it and fight again, but we're just not going to get that in this film. Probably because there just wasn't enough time. But it could have some sort of impact later that we just don't know about yet. Could be interesting.
So, but it also, it means that Banner serves as sort of a reminder to the other Avengers as to just what's coming and how horrible it is. Because remember, until the very end, none of the Avengers on Earth ever lay eyes on Thanos. So Banner is the only person there who has seen Thanos up close, and he serves as sort of just this messenger of doom that look, this is coming. I've seen it, and it's got the Hulk running away with his tail between his legs. So the Avengers go to Wakanda, where we're reintroduced to Bucky Barnes with a fresh new metal arm, and they're coordinating with Black Panther and what was the sister's name? I want to say Shuri. They make the plan that Shuri has figured out.
Sorry, I can never remember. In Black Panther there was Zuri and Shuri, and I cannot switch.
T'Challa's sister.
Yes, T'Challa's sister. I'm sorry, you have a name and it's Mason. I just can't remember what it is.
Yeah, has figured out a way to remove the Mind Stone without killing Vision. So here we have this okay, to reiterate, the Hail Mary pass up to this point is that they might have to destroy the Mind Stone, which would kill Vision. But here comes T'Challa's sister, says, look, I can remove the stone and we can destroy it without killing Vision, but it's going to take me some time. And Thanos is rolling up. So we basically get a Return of the King-esque battle sequence with the Avengers joining up with the various tribes of Wakanda to fight it out on a huge battlefield, which had some really great fight scenes, and I really enjoyed seeing the Avengers and fighting alongside the Wakandans. We got to see M'Baku come back, which I love.
M'Baku was so great. I love him so much.
So, but really the only real character arc that carries out throughout this arc, aside from Bruce Banner's, is again the relationship between Wanda and the Vision. And the Vision is adamant that look, push comes to shove, you need to kill me. That's just the way this is going to, if it comes to it, that's the way this is going to have to go. And Wanda is just no, we don't trade lives. I'm not going to do it. We can't let this happen. So we get this really epic battle scene, which really we can't really talk about standout character arcs, but we can talk about some stand-up fights. And I got to say, the 2-on-1 with Okoye, Black Widow, and the female Thanos general, I thought was really cool.
Oh, the girl power fight, which was totally amazing.
I called it the Mortal Kombat endurance match, because like when they're squaring up and getting ready to fight, I could almost hear the announcement games going, "Round 1, fight!"
The fight did suffer from no one will fight a girl but a girl. I don't know what it's like a thing in movies where because I guess they don't want to show a man beating a woman. And the female general has a really cool appearance. I can't tell you anything about her because they do no character development for any of the generals, but she looks real cool. But no one ever hits her but another woman, pretty much. Especially in the last fight, for sure.
Well, I mean, I don't know. We don't know the gender of the driver of the tank that wound up chewing her.
Wasn't that Wanda? Wanda like moved something with her mind and it hit her.
I'm trying to recall if that particular tank had been flung around by Wanda, or if that happened before Wanda joined the field. I'm trying to recall.
I think it happened. That was the moment where Wanda joined in, and then Okoye was like, "Where has she been all this?"
Which was a great moment.
That was great.
And then another great moment was when Thor joined the fight with Rocket, and Bruce Banner's like, "Oh, yo, we're screwed now!"
Because that moment where Thor comes down and got the big axe and he's lightening up everything, and you're like, holy shit. It's a reminder that Thor's kind of a god, guys. Like, he doesn't always seem completely OP in the other Avenger films, and this was definitely a moment where we're reminded that he's kind of seriously OP compared to the others, because he's just fucking flying around. He's like mowing people down with lightning. It's really fucking impressive, which again makes me sad that they didn't somehow get more weapons on that planet, because that would have been really useful. But by far the best part of that fight was the return of Groot, like impaling like 6 people and flinging them around, and Thor going, "This is my friend Tree."
I am Groot, and
I am Groot.
And Thor's just like,
Rogers.
"I am Steve Rogers."
Like, it was so good.
My favorite moment was the Looney Tunes bit with Winter Soldier and Rocket, where Winter Soldier has his gun in one hand, he's holding Rocket by his head in the other, and they're spinning around and doing a whirling dervish of bullets. And then after it's done, Rocket's like, "Okay, how much for the gun?" "It's not for sale." "How much for the arm?" "Not for sale." "Oh, I'm going to get that arm."
That was definitely a film in fans, because pretty much since the Winter Soldier was introduced and Rocket was introduced, we've kind of known that Rocket would want that arm. Like, there's memes about it and comics about it, and that little moment was just like multiple years of wish fulfillment. God, that's amazing.
So Thor and Wanda join the field, and they just wreck everybody's shit. And then at this point, all lines kind of converge as Thanos himself comes to Earth. At this point, he has all 5 of the Infinity Stones, and all of the Avengers, Vision included, are basically trying to stop him from getting a hold of the Mind Stone. And it's here that again we have one of those moments where we see Thanos just curb stomp all the other Avengers. And it's at this point that we realize that, the plan to remove the Mind Stone has failed. One of the third general had actually gone in hiding during the battle, and when Wanda left the laboratory, he stormed the lab and attacked T'Challa's sister. No word yet on whether or not she survived. I hope she did. She's a neat character.
She almost certainly lived.
Yeah. So Vision has taken to the field, and they've realized that the plan to remove the Mind Stone safely has failed. It's do or die. They've got to destroy the Mind Stone, and Wanda's got to do it. So while Wanda is using her power to shatter the Mind Stone, we see the other Avengers just go full on Thanos, and he just curb stomps every single one of them. Like, it's almost like he's just walking through, like, like a wheat field, like just mowing people down. The only one who gets any kind of appreciable impedance on him is Captain America, and even that gets stopped with like one good left hook or right hook because the gauntlet's on the left hand. But at the last second, Wanda destroys the Mind Stone, and we kind of see again kind of a pet the dog moment from Thanos, where he's just like, you did what you had to do, and I understand that. And he kind of, feels sympathetic to Wanda that, she did something that was painful to her. And then again, the movie pulls the rug out from under you, because remember, he's got the Time Stone, and he does the thing that Doctor Strange did in his movie. He rewinds time to before the Mind Stone was destroyed, and then just brutally rips it out of Vision's skull. And I gotta say, watching that, I hope he didn't have the capacity to feel physical pain at that moment, because, like, wow.
Yeah.
That was like watching. That was, I can only describe it as a by hand, very sloppy lobotomy. Yeah,
that would have. So Thanos gets all of the stones. How much, I can't remember, because again, it's been a little while. How much do we see him do with those stones before the ending?
Well, really, by the point right after he gets the 6th Mind Stone, and we see him put it to the glove, and he's kind of the whole basking in the power. At that point, we see Thor's axe Stormbreaker come flying in out of nowhere, and bury itself in his chest. And Thor basically comes up and, shoves the axe further into Thanos' chest. Is like, I told you at the start of this that you would die for what you've done. And, it seems like it's like, a last minute save. Thanos is beaten. He's dying. And this is where the movie just, again, this is the final rug it pulls, because with his last breath, Thanos tells Thor, "You should have gone for the head." And he snaps his fingers, screen smashes to white, and the next thing we see is Thanos is in this sort of otherworldly area where we see a young Gamora, and she's like, "Did you do it?" And he's like, "Yes." And she's like, "Well, what did it cost you?" And he's like, "Everything." And then the movie just gets to this is where the movie enters the what the fuck stage, as it's revealed that Thanos has done what he intended to do, and we start to see people randomly just disintegrate and fade out of existence. People that we have grown to know and love over the course of these films. The most heartbreaking was Spider-Man's. And, the theory that I have is, Thanos said that the way he was going to annihilate half of all life was he was going to do it, just blink them out of existence, and that it was going to be painless. But you hear Spider-Man, crying about how he's not feeling well, and he knows it's coming. And I think that's because his spider sense was going off and telling him he was about to die.
Yeah. Yeah, that was absolutely heartbreaking. Not just because Spider-Man is super adorable and still fairly we haven't really seen him, at his full potential yet, but because of the look on Tony's face. Because Tony could care less about the Guardians of the Galaxy, who all just vanished before him, but it was his protege, who you could almost look at.
And just a kid at that.
It's like he's looking at his surrogate son, basically. His protege, who he has put in this danger, who he did not want to be in this danger, but he was putting faith in, and to watch what he assumed was his son figure dying in his arms, and being racked with that pain and that guilt is something we don't get that much out of Tony. Tony is about pomp and swagger and being right all the time, and it was absolutely heartbreaking to watch him go, and then to watch Tony's reaction. And anyone's reaction to it, really, but that one by far the most heartbreaking. The one that I was surprised the most was it kind of led off with Bucky and T'Challa, who are characters that, we kind of figured nothing would possibly happen to them in this film. And like, how can you just write off these two characters in particular when we've spent so long bringing Bucky back and introducing T'Challa in his own film, and you're like, no, this is not happening.
So
to me, the most interesting part about this moment was not everyone vanishing and break. It was that when Thanos snapped his fingers and used the gauntlet, it kind of seemed like the power of it all, the gauntlet.
And it was all singed and bent.
And Thor is just screaming, "What have you done? Like, what did you do?" And then Thanos bamps out. And we don't see exactly what happened, but it looked like he broke the gauntlet in the process of doing it. And I know from just enough from comics to know that Thanos, gets the gauntlet full every once in a while. It's like a thing he does. He goes out and finds them, and I don't know, does he like send them off again, and then when he gets bored, he goes back and finds them?
I don't know. That would be a question to put to Brian, because I actually never read Infinity War or any of the stuff with Thanos. I was until I started working at the comic shop. The only Marvel comic I read with any regularity was The Punisher. So,
well, in any case, usually when Thanos is in, he has an idea of all and how to use them to their full potential. And this film gave me the impression that even if he had ever put his hands on any of the stones before and used them, which I think he has, he's never had all of them together, and he didn't quite have a mastery of what he was doing, and that's why the gauntlet ended up broken or singed or whatever it was at the end. Like, the gauntlet couldn't handle the full power, and I don't think he quite knew what he was doing. And if you want to start exploring and unpacking the fucking ending where everybody seems to be dead or disappearing, do you have theories? Because there is a popular theory out there that none of those people are actually dead.
Well, I can't comment because, like I said, I'm not sure about the mechanics because I never read Infinity War, so I don't know how it went.
I don't know anything about the comics.
But the transition to the brief transition to the other world that we saw Thanos take after he snapped his fingers was interesting. I'd be interested to know if that was something that was an actual place that he briefly went to, or if that was just something that the stones made him see in his mind, particularly the presence of a young Gamora there. So the idea that maybe instead of all those characters being dead, they've just been sent off to the cornfield or something, that idea might hold some water.
Well, I did a brief lookup of all the stones after I saw the movie, and I read, and I don't know to what extent this actually works in the comics, but the Soul Stone has the ability to create a pocket dimension. So my theory is that Thanos didn't really know what he was doing, and he thought he was eliminating all these people, when I think, in fact, he accidentally just sent them to a pocket dimension.
Well, that is a possibility.
And because one of the people who does disappear is Stephen Strange, I don't think there's a better qualified person to deal with a pocket dimension, and maybe perhaps the escaping thereof, than Doctor Strange. I mean, he's like the best man for the job if that is true.
Well, and he did seem rather nonplussed at his disappearance. In fact, his last words before he vanishes are, "It was the only way."
Right,
so
and that's how we know that
he might have an ace up his sleeve.
Yeah, like, we know that everything is on track with what the only way to beat Thanos, whatever trek that is, they're on it. So I feel pretty good about everybody there either not being dead or not being permanently dead. Either because they'll find a way to undo it with the Time Stone, or that they are actually all just in a pocket dimension because of the Soul Stone. There's also a theory that of the people who we saw die on screen, that Gamora is not actually dead, that she is somehow either, like, she was killed via, her death was an illusion created to make Thanos believe that he had in fact killed the only thing he loved and that she's really alive somewhere still on that planet, or that she is somehow trapped in the Soul Stone somehow or another, and that she is still alive somewhere on the other side, basically.
Well, again, that is the possibility. As to what Marvel plans to do with that, I'm not totally sure. But yeah, this moment here was, I think, the boldest move we've seen Marvel make in one of their films, because for the first time, well, maybe not necessarily the first time, depending on how you interpret Civil War, but this is the first time that we've seen the bad guy unequivocally win. He did what he set out to do, and the heroes are basically, they got their asses kicked. Yeah. Captain America is shell-shocked. The only thing he can say once everything goes down is just, "Oh my God!" Like he's never had this happen before.
And not only did the bad guy win and the good guys lost and got their asses handed to them, but they are in a no-win scenario. Because with Thanos, and of course that's not true, but in their eyes, there is no coming back from it. As far as they're concerned, half of the universe, half of the denizens of the universe were just murdered, straight up murdered. And that Thanos has these stones that make him unstoppable. They understand now the power of the stones, and they have every reason to be absolutely hopeless. That's what the movie was. The ending of that movie rid you of any and all hope. The only thing that could possibly give you hope at the end was in the stinger. And even then, because a lot of us viewers, myself included, don't know a shit about Captain Marvel, we're kind of twiddling our thumbs going, well, what the fuck are we supposed to do now? How can they possibly come back from this? And that's why I said, I don't feel like I watched a movie. I feel like I'm burdened with knowledge. I feel like I saw something that just destroyed a part of my soul, and I have no hope of returning it, because I don't understand how they're supposed to beat Thanos in the second film. We all know there's a second film out there, but we don't know how it can possibly come up from where they're at.
Now, I want to ask this, just for my own edification. When you saw the film, did you see it in 3D or did you see it without 3D?
I didn't see it in 3D because 3D usually makes me sick.
Okay, the reason why I ask is because the first time I saw it in 3D, and the second time I saw it without. And for some reason, and I'd like to know if anybody else can confirm this or not, I don't remember there being any music in the 3D cut during the cast roll. I remember it being totally silent, which, that might just have been a malfunction at the theater, but it made the whole rattling off the cast feel almost like reading a memorial.
Oh my God.
But I don't remember any music kicking in until the title appeared. You heard that slow piano motif.
God, and now a moment of silence for everyone for literally half of the universe. Oh my God.
So, but there was this really, when I saw it the second time with my dad without 3D, there's this really bombastic score that went with the cast roll. So I want to know, was it different based on what movie that you saw, or was that just a malfunction at the theater I saw it at?
God, I was shell-shocked, so I don't even remember.
So we pretty much discussed the plot of the film, and we're
over the course of an hour.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a supersized episode. So let's start talking about briefly on the presentation of this film. What did you think of the visuals and audio and such of this film?
For the most part, the visuals were quite good. Whenever they do CG aliens and stuff, it doesn't always work out to look super realistic. But I don't know. I could tell the CG alien, Thanos' minions weren't real, but I thought they were just so interestingly done. They didn't look like the Kree, they weren't generic, bad guys. They were all very different from one another. And I really enjoyed just them visually. The ships that they were in on were very, very cool. We haven't really seen ships that look like that before. Like Thanos' ship that we see right at the end of Ragnarok is just like, it's so generic looking, you know? It looks like a fucking ship. But these like circular like hoop ships that sort of like swirl around and cause destruction were really freaking cool. Visually speaking, they were just different. As for the rest of the visuals, I mean, my God, so much happened in this film that it's really hard to pinpoint on anything because it's so good. But I think my favorite visual was actually was Red Skull, because it was just something different. It took a character who we all knew, visually speaking, and we had known for quite some time, and we haven't had anything to suggest a visual change on that character since the first Captain America, and to see this wraith-like, frightening, just ghostly version of him, I thought it was very, very interesting and so appropriate for a character whose face is a fucking skull. Like, it was so neat and it was so well done and it was all very creepy. So and it came out of fucking nowhere. So it was really cool. And then I really liked the look of the axe, of Thor's new axe as well.
Stormbreaker. There were a couple of effects that kind of took me out of the film. One of which you kind of touched on. Mentioned Peter Dinklage.
Yeah.
Knowing that, just how small a person Peter Dinklage is in real life. Sorry, there's no other way I could put that. To see him kind of sized up as a dwarf, that really kind of took me out of the film. It's like, okay, yeah, that's a pretty obvious effect. And I wasn't really too keen on the the nano machine Iron Man arm. I wasn't all that keen on that effect. I tell you an effect that I did really love, and one of the things that I talked before in our Jurassic World review is one of the problems that I have with CGI creatures is that they very often don't have a sense of weight or presence. Like, it's very hard for me to feel like they're actually there, that they're actually present with the actors. But the work that was done on Thanos for this movie, it definitely, there was just so many subtleties to his character model and to his movements and how he interacted with the characters and the environments that I honestly found myself catching myself a couple of times thinking that he wasn't a CGI creation, that really was, that his actor really was just that big a dude. So I really enjoyed the effects work that was done for Thanos in this movie. And if that's where the lion's share of the effects work went, it would not surprise me in the least. I also really loved the visuals of Thanos breaking the moon and winging the parts at the Guardians on Titan. I thought that was a really neat effect. And then there were just some of the little touches, like when Thanos uses the Reality Stone to change the debris around him into like butterflies or some shit. Just these neat little touches to the fights that added a distinct visual flair that I really enjoyed. But Peter Dinklage, and to a lesser extent, the one priest-like minion, I felt was kind of, not really all. The minion could have used a little extra time in the oven. He seemed like a pretty obvious CGI effect to me. But Thanos, I actually caught myself a couple times thinking that he was actually there, and that was an actual, there was an actual person there. Which I haven't been that drawn in by a film's visuals since the original Jurassic Park. So that tells you something.
Yeah, my God. I don't know what the budget for this film was, but I assume most of it went to, because it was spectacular.
Assume it went to Thanos? Yeah. So now I guess the only thing now, discuss the film and its presentation. I guess the only thing now is to let the wild and baseless speculation commence. What do you think this means for the future of the MCU?
Oh my God. I can't wrap my mind around what they're going to do for Ant-Man and the... because that's coming out pretty soon, and I don't quite have a grasp of when it takes place. Is it going to take place right before Infinity War? Right after Infinity War? because there's only 2 MCU films between now and the next Infinity War, or the next Avengers film. There's Ant-Man and Wasp and Captain Marvel. And Captain Marvel is set to take place in the 90s. With, like, Nick Fury, and there's going to be, like, a Kree storyline, and Ronan is supposed to be in it, and
Agent Coulson's coming back. Yay!
Oh my god, I can't wait.
It makes me so happy. Oh
my god. So, like, the big thing for the MCU that I'm worried about is what are they going to do with Wasp? My hope is that it would take place directly before Infinity War, so that they don't have to have a lot of... It would be... How to explain this? Ant-Man is a really fun, humorous movie like Guardians of the Galaxy, and it would be really hard to watch something like Infinity War and then have a good, jolly laugh afterwards.
You know what I think they're going to do? I think that Ant-Man is going to take place either just before Infinity War or concurrently with it, and that it's going to end with either Ant-Man or the Wasp disintegrating at the end. And if I were betting it, I would say that they would have Ant-Man disintegrate and have the third movie be about the Wasp.
I would actually guess that of everything that they could do with anybody in that cast disintegrating, I would say his to give him the necessary motivation to get involved with the next movie.
So you think they're going to off his family?
I would. That's what I would do. Because there are so few heroes left. Because let's take a tally of who's left and where they're at, because that also makes a difference. Because it's Iron Man and Nebula left together Titan. Are on Titan.
In Wakanda, we have Captain America, we have War Machine, we have Bruce Banner. Assuming they can get him out of that rock, we have Rocket Raccoon. And then we have Thor. And then I think that's it. I think those are the only ones left.
Right. So presumably out there is probably Hawkeye. Didn't show him integrating. He's probably still alive, but also because his wife from whichever other film, Age of Ultron, whichever one that was.
Age of Ultron, yeah.
I believe she is. Her name is listed among the cast, so I think they're going to go guy for the film. And there's not a lot of people left to put up a defense or an offense of any kind. So there's nobody left. There's really so few left, and presumably Captain Marvel will come in. And if the MCU had any brains, this would be a great time to bring in Nova.
I'll tell you something that I'd like to see them do, and this hinges on them. But, as you said, we've only got 2 more films for the next Avengers film, which is not coming out for a year at least, I don't think.
Yeah, it's a year.
Yeah, so they're going to need to fill that gap with something. So I think it would be really cool if in the next season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they dealt with the fallout of the Infinity War. I think that would be really neat to see.
Yeah. I haven't kept up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. lately, but they're about tying in whatever happens in the film to the point where I feel sorry for them, because that's really, really hard to keep doing what they're doing. And it would be nice to have the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. actually show up in the next Infinity War, because they're one of the few left fighting a good fight. What I'm concerned about, besides Ant-Man, is actually the Netflix TV series, because they are...
Oh, that's right. We got Luke Cage later this year, don't we?
I know, we do. We have Luke Cage out. I don't know how much they share when Luke Cage is already filming and they're concluding Infinity War, and are they going to tie these in together? Are they going to kind of ignore them?
I'll tell you what, if Danny Rand were to disappear, I would not shed any tears.
Oh my god, if you were the first person to make that joke that I had seen today. Oh man.
So
we're not that lucky.
I don't think the Defenders or the Punisher are going to be very much affected by the events of Infinity War. They may reference it, but I don't think they're going to feel any real fallout from it, because the Netflix shows have kept themselves very much at arm's length from the rest of the MCU.
Right, and normally when they do, like, it's sort of like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They deal with the fallout. They're not involved in the plot and the story and all of that. They deal with the day-to-day human being who is reeling from whatever latest shock has happened. So if anything, because I don't know when they filmed Luke Cage or if they're still filming Luke Cage, and if they're going to be able to tie that in, or if it's too late to make references in the show. But if they do, it'll be the very human fallout, not the burning buildings, the helicopter going down and stuff like that. But it'll be, more intimate, more like Luke Cage comforting a mother who lost her son, because that's totally Luke Cage right there. It's something like that. But I feel sorry for them, because holy shit, they have a literal bombshell just went off, and now they have to deal with it if they want to put out any more shows now in the next film. So I'm kind of hoping maybe Luke Cage is the only show that they put out between now and the next movie, because anything else is going to be so hard to deal with the world that has now been recreated.
Yeah, unless they do like they're doing with Captain Marvel, set it before the events of Infinity War, which I could see happening, but we can only see. So so we've run a little long on this episode, so I think it's about time we start wrapping things up. So let's start wrapping things up by giving our final thoughts on Marvel Infinity War. So Kat, why don't you go first? Your final thoughts.
Infinity War was a wild, highly enjoyable, was just a masterpiece of unexpected filmmaking. We really quite shocked at how little I predicted was going to happen. A very, very excellent crown of achievement for 10 years of build up to this. And I really can't wait for the next one. It'll be interesting to see how they can possibly come from where they are currently at. It was really great, guys. But if you do see it, please make sure you see it after seeing almost all of the previous Marvel films. If you don't see Black Panther, and especially if you don't see Thor Ragnarok or Guardians of the Galaxy, either of them, this is not going to make a lot of sense.
I'd say top four are Age of Ultron, Civil War, Black Panther, and Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, you should try and see all of them, but those in particular. Also, Doctor Strange.
And Guardians of the Galaxy, so those 6.
It's kind of important. It's good if you have a general, but understanding the setup for the character interactions that currently exist, it's really good to see Civil War first and to know where the beginning of this movie even takes place. It's really important to see Thor Ragnarok, and for half of the fucking cast you need to know Guardians of the Galaxy, and to understand the importance of the Infinity Stones you should see Guardians 1 and Doctor Strange.
Yeah. So yeah. But I really enjoyed this film, even though after it was done I had a lot to process. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this film, even though it's definitely one that I had to stop and process afterwards and really think on, because I knew I liked the movie, but I had to figure out why. It's definitely a very bold move on Marvel's part to do the things that they did in this film. It's definitely like no other Marvel film has come before. And my chief worry with the next one is that they have set things up, is that they pulled a Stephen Moffat, and that they've set things up so high that they will never be able to have the resolution live up to it. But we'll have to see how that goes. So this is a part of the show where we give our final ratings on the film. As always, our rating scale goes from best to worst. See it now, wait for matinee, wait for DVD, wait for cable, don't even bother, and fuck this movie. So, Kat, what's your final rating on this?
Absolutely see this movie now. If you are a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's probably because you haven't had any time to make time to see this film, if only so that you can join in the conversations with your friends at work, because I know everyone's talking about it. Like the day that I got to see it, and then some of my coworkers hadn't seen it, and we were like, those of us who had seen it were just like huddled off in a corner trying to exchange theories and talk about what had happened, and it was really just 4 people going, holy fucking shit, over and over and over again. So please go see this film right away. Have wonderful, great conversations with your friends. Be like that dude 2 seats away from me who was crying at the end of the film. Just be wowed and amazed by it, because it really is, wow, it's so amazing. And again, try to get caught up in the MCU before you go see it. Otherwise, it'll still make sense, but you won't get the same emotional impact.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say it now. This is the movie that we've all been waiting for, and it's definitely been worth the wait. So yeah, this is it, guys. This is what we've been waiting for, and it's everything that Marvel has promised us. And a few things that they didn't promise us, but that we didn't know were going to be awesome anyway. So, yeah. So that's all the time that we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will see you guys next week. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the Cat.
See you next week. Taka, play us out.